Buddhism was founded by Siddhartha. Siddhartha was born in 560 BC as a royal prince in what is now modern-day Nepal. He lived an early, sheltered life of luxury and comfort. At the age of 29, he retired to the forest where he followed a spiritual life of meditation. He gave away all his possessions and sought to find enlightenment through his lack of materialistic things. Siddhartha started his quest off with a period of starvation. He grew so thin he came close to death. He realized this was not the right way to bring about enlightenment. Siddhartha discovered he needed to find another way. He resolved to the middle path, a lifestyle between the rich and poor. Middle path means to investigate the core of life and all things with an upright and unbiased attitude. It represents with a distinct theory and practice not common in other religions. It avoids other attachments to two extremes. After 6 years of searching, Siddhartha finally found enlightenment after sitting under the Bodhi tree for 40 days. Siddhartha, the first Buddha, traveled spreading his knowledge and teachings of enlightenment. Small communities of monks and nuns sprung up along the roads that the Buddha traveled. Devoted to his teachings, they dressed in yellow robes and wandered the countryside to meditate quietly. For almost 200 years, these humble disciples were overshadowed by the dominant Hindu believers. But the rise of a great empire changed all that. In the 3rd century BC, several ambitious leaders built the expansive Muran Empire and fought many bloody battles to extend its boundaries of control. One king, named Ashoka, was so troubled by the effects of the conquest on humanity that he converted to Buddhism. Adopting a code of nonviolence, he renounced all warfare and incorporated principles of Buddhism in his ruling practices. Ashoka promoted Buddhist expansion by spreading monks to surrounding territories to share the teachings of the Buddha. A wave of conversion began, and Buddhism spread not only through India, but also internationally. Burma, Nepal, Tibet, Central Asia, China, and Japan are just some of the regions where the middle path was widely accepted. With its great spread of Buddhism, its traditional practices and philosophies became redefined and regionally distinct. Only a small minority practiced the earliest forms of Buddhism, and Buddhist influence as a whole began to fade within India. Some scholars believe that many Buddhist practices were simply absorbed in the tolerant Hindu faith. Today, there are approximately 350 million Buddhists in the world.
The first school is known as Theravada Buddhism, also called the Doctrine of the Elders. The main text used by this sect of Buddhism is the Pali Canon. This sect has about 100 million followers in countries including Cambodia, Thailand, and Burma, and it is also becoming more popular in Singapore, Vietnam, and parts of the Western world. This form of Buddhism is characterized by its orthodoxy, and they are considered to follow the closest teaching of the Buddha. The text they use, the Pali Canon, is the oldest surviving Buddhist text. They hold the beliefs that each individual can attain enlightenment by himself, and the best way to do this is by joining the monastic way of life, including actions such as practicing mindfulness, meditation, and chanting verses from the Pali Canon. Mahayana Buddhism, also called the Great Vehicle, is mostly popular in China, Japan, Korea, and Mongolia, and is also spread very widely throughout the Western world. Mahayana Buddhism promotes liberation of suffering for all beings. Where Theravada focuses on individual enlightenment, Mahayana preaches that Buddhas are to help us attain collective illumination. Thus, they believe in supernatural Buddhas who devote themselves to the perfections, ultimate knowledge, and the liberation of all beings. The Buddha is seen as the ultimate highest being, present in all times, in all beings, and in all places, and they represent the universal ideal of excellence. Vajrayana Buddhism, also known as the Diamond Way, is about the mind itself. This sect of Buddhism focuses on the idea that only one can perceive perfection outside because they have the same innate perfection inside. In Vajrayana, the Buddha is not considered a person. Instead, he is viewed as a mirror to our own mind. The teachings of this sect point out the mind's perfect qualities. They are often known as the Buddhist Tantra. The Vajrayana also includes the Theravada and Mahayana teachings. One of the symbolisms in Buddhism is the umbrella, which is usually meant to protect people from different elements, such as the sun or the rain. In the Buddhist religion, the umbrella can mean protection from suffering and harmful forces. Another symbol in Buddhism is the two golden fish, which in older times were drawn to symbolize the Ganges and the Yamuna rivers. It has, over time, come to mean luck and fortune. It also means showing courage and fearlessness to face the ocean of sufferings. Another symbol in Buddhism is the conch shell. This large shell has been used in many countries as a traditional battle horn. In Buddhism, the white conch shell that spirals to the right can mean the deep and joyful sound of the Dharma teachings. It is representative of the awakening disciples receive when they hear these teachings. The conch shell can also mean the arousing of people from ignorance. The lotus has been used in many teachings of Buddhism to impart the true nature of all mankind. The roots of the lotus plant are stuck deep in the mud, but it still grows above murky water and blossoms into a beautiful flower. The lotus can represent how we rise up from our sufferings to reach enlightenment, beauty, and clarity. Different colored lotus plants mean different things in Buddhism. White means spiritual and mental purity. Pink means the traditional Buddha. Purple is for mysticism. Red means love and compassion, while blue means wisdom. The banner of pride represents how Buddha won over the demon Mara. This demon, in Buddhism, is synonymous to passion, lust, and pride. The banner of victory is used to remind people that one must win over their pride, lust, and passions in order to reach enlightenment. The vase in Buddhism can mean the showering of wealth, health, prosperity, and all the good things that come with enlightenment. The Dharma wheel is often used to represent the Buddha himself. It has also universally become the symbol for Buddhism. The Dharma wheel has 8 spokes, which represents the Buddha's Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path, also known as the Middle Way, is believed in Buddhism as the way to achieve spiritual enlightenment. The eternal knot is said to symbolize how everything is connected. It can also represent how religion and secular affairs, as well as compassion and wisdom, are united and connected to each other. Buddhist prayer and chanting are guided meditations used to remind the contemplative of the internal knowledge that prayer can render. By reciting these affirmations with heartfelt devotion, the individual is reaffirming his or her commitment, not to some deity or another person, but to the ideal of the prayer.
Here's some interesting facts about Buddhism. The Bauddha Dharma Buddhism can be translated as the religion of the Buddha or the way of the Buddha. Buddhism was founded in the northeastern part of India, between India and Nepal. Buddhism is a non-theistic religion. This means that it's independent from the belief or belief from God. It's more of a philosophy. Buddhism teaches that the middle way is the best path towards liberation. Neither too much or too little are good for spiritual advancement. The fig tree is revered in Buddhism because it was under a fig tree that Buddha got enlightened. The Buddha is one who is perfected and purified and has no more cravings and thus no more births. Full Moon Day is a sacred day, especially the Buddha Purnama, the birthday of Buddha, also the day of his enlightenment and death, nirvana. Visitors do not wear shoes inside the viharas. Candles and incense sticks are lit during worship, and they symbolize light, which is knowledge. Purpose of life of the Buddha is to attain liberation from the cycle of birth and death, which is the cause of suffering. Some interesting numbers about Buddhism. Buddhism was founded in the 6th century BC. It is the 4th largest religion by population behind Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism. There are 4 noble truths: suffering, origin of suffering, an end to suffering, and a way to end suffering. There are 6 realms or types of existence: Nakara beings, Preta, animals, human beings, Asuras, and Devas. There are 4 immeasurables, 4 virtues and practices for their attainment: loving, kindness, compassion, empathetic joy. There are 12 sources of suffering, and they are interdependent, and there are 5 precepts, which are the guidelines to be followed by a serious Buddhist. Those are the fun facts of Buddhism.
While visiting the Murakami Japanese gardens, we spoke with an employee named Carol who was well educated in the Buddhist religion. She first spoke about the Paradise Gardens. Paradise Gardens are miniature Shina gardens with islands. These were the first gardens that were spiritual or sacred. The samurai would walk on it on their way to a tea ceremony with the monks. After battling all day, they went to meditate. The idea for paradise gardens arose from the Jodo sect of Buddhism, the Pure Land sect dedicated to the Buddha Amida. Amida was the Buddha of compassion in the heart. If you know hiragana, the kanji lettering of both Chinese and Japanese, the kanji character for compassion is the shape of that garden. All paradise gardens throughout the country are that shape of that character. They believed paradise was across the western horizon and that it was everlasting. This was the Jodo Buddhism belief, which was a little different than others. Next, Carol spoke about rock gardens, which meant enlightenment and peace within. Carol stated how Buddhism isn't so much a religion, but a philosophy as to live your life. Zen gardens are the raked gardens. Zen gardens were found in later Zen Buddhism. The abstract is very symbolic. Carol explained the grooming in the Zen gardens. Generally, Zen gardens are pruned a few times a year. They are leaf blown and re-raked. When raked, they use a big wooden rake with large teeth that they pull through the gravel. To get it perfectly symmetrical, they overlap the next section. When grooming, one has to be very careful not to step in the previous raked section. You would not want to trap yourself in the middle of the garden with no way out besides stepping over your already groomed work. There is an art to it. Every garden is different. When Buddhism changed, it went from an everlasting heavenly existence over the western horizon to Buddhism form within the absolute stillness Zen, which meant much more deprivation of senses than previous centuries.